Committee will come to order. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning to talk about a topic that is not new to this committee. And that topic is the needed improvements to the disability claims processing system. As of this week, VA had nearly 900,000 pending claims, with over 70% of those claims pending for longer than VA's targeted processing time of 125 days. Now, recently, VA has rolled out its transformation plan as a means of addressing this growing backlog of claims. Now, a quick search of Merriam-Webster's dictionary, transformation means the act of changing in composition or structure. Similarly, plan is defined as a detailed formulation of a program or an action. What we have seen from VA so far does not amount to a significant change in the culture of the organization, nor has VA provided a very detailed formulation of the plans that they have for moving forward. Although it is my hope that VA is truly committed to changing the culture of the department. Most of what we've seen so far consists of repackaging old initiatives with new PowerPoint presentations and impressive buzzwords. Speaking of buzzwords, VA has repeatedly stated that it plans on accomplishing its transformation plan by focusing on people, process, and technology. Now, our purpose this morning is to focus on the first of these three elements, and what may be the most important element, and that is people. Although much emphasis is placed on the process and technology, I do believe that we should focus more on the people that are doing the work. There are thousands of men and women who on a daily basis work throughout the Department of Veterans Affairs doing a great job, and those jobs should not go unacknowledged. Nonetheless, the more people VA hires to process claims, it appears the worse the department's productivity is. Indeed, as the first chart that we will put on the screen this morning shows, in 1997, the average VA field employee processed 135 claims per year, whereas in 2011, that number had dropped to 73 claims per year. Further, as the second chart shows, VA has nearly 3 times as many field employees to do the work now than it did 15 years ago. Now, one would think that working fewer cases per employee would result in higher accuracy rates, but actually accuracy is stagnant as the budget has grown exponentially. Unfortunately, so too have the processing delays. As I've stated many times before, there are many people, including myself, who are losing patience as we continue to hear the same excuses from VA about increased workload and increased complexity of claims. And let me just give you one example from VA's own budget books, and I quote, "The effect of the military drawdown on VA's claims process is marked not only by a large volume of claims being received, but also by increasing complexity of those claims. As a result of the pre-discharge counseling being given to service personnel, veterans have been claiming more conditions on their initial applications. Instead of the traditional 2 to 3 disabilities per claim, regional offices are dealing with 10 to 15 issues per claim." Now, I could go on, but I just asked, does this sound familiar? It should, because of what I just read to you came out of VA's February 1994 budget submission. Now, VA has and will encounter complications along the way. However, VA's demonstrated history shows its inability or refusal to forecast problems and anticipate its needs, and the only people paying a price for the failure of VA are the veterans. The time for excuses is over. So Undersecretary Hickey, we are here today to have an honest discussion about the people who make up VBA, from file clerks to RO directors to VA central office managers, on how you intend to transform this workforce through better accountability and workload management practices. Now, I recently had the opportunity to travel to Baltimore to their RO, and I was able to observe new employees challenge training. And I also learned more about the station enhancement training that the Baltimore RO will soon undergo. And although proper training is important, I'd like to reiterate that that is not all there is that needs to be done. VA also needs to remain focused on accountability and better workload management practices. For example, when the words we hear most often from VA when you're called before us is NEMR. NEMR, a class action lawsuit that requires VA to prioritize certain Agent Orange presumptions, did in fact add significantly to VA's workload. However, during the 111th Congress, Secretary Shinseki testified before this committee that VA would easily be able to fast track those claims. And I quote, by 2013, we will be back to where we are today at about 161 days to process a claim. Undersecretary Hickey, as you know, we are not anywhere near that number today. On the contrary, 280 days for an initial rating decision. Without better workload or surge capacity planning, I am fearful that VA is simply one national mission away from complete collapse and utter failure. This is simply unacceptable. So again, we are here today to explore how the people who make up VA can prevent this scenario from happening. And I want to thank the Undersecretary for being here today, as well as all those who have submitted statements for the record. And I now yield to our ranking member, Mr. Michaud, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today. And I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize that it has been a decade since we started Operation Iraqi Freedom. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have claimed 6,669 American lives, with over 50,000 wounded in action and countless others suffering mental injuries as a result. I want to thank you to all the veterans advocates on this committee and in the audience who have worked hard to assist these fine men and women who served our great nation. Since March of 2003, there is much that we should be proud of. The post-9/11 GI Bill that ensured that these veterans have the opportunity of an excellent college education, record increase in budgets for the VA programs, and services that have led to a better care and access for our nation's veterans in rural areas. But there's still much more to be done. Despite the positive outcomes, we have a lot of challenges facing our veterans and their families. While the VA continues to process more claims than at any other time in its history, demand continues to outpace production. Today, as you heard, VA's total inventory is approaching 900,000. Claims with more than two-thirds of the claims are considered part of the backlog. However, despite the growing backlog, I'm encouraged by some of the recent developments and by the shift in attitude of some of VA's efforts to solve the backlog problem. Nonetheless, while I appreciate the Secretary's goal of having no veteran wait for longer than 125 days with an accuracy rate of 98% by 2015, I question whether this very, very aggressive, ambitious goal is achievable. It would require the VA to complete approximately 3.4 million claims in 2.5 years. To accomplish this goal, the VA must start averaging the completion of approximately 1.36 million claims a year. That's a 33% increase in productivity. These are loose numbers, and I hope the VA does have better ones, but in my mind, the math doesn't add up, and I'm not sure how we're going to get there by 2015. I also questioned whether the VA is being upfront with Congress about its challenges. In particular, does VBA have enough employees to get the job done? I'm not convinced that it does. And is VBA getting all of the information that you need from the Department of Defense in a timely fashion? I don't believe that's the case either. VA's ability to process claims in a paperless electronic environment can only be as good as the information that goes into the system. If you don't have the resources required and you're not receiving information from DOD or other agencies, we need to know about that. Further, I'm concerned that VBA is simply trying to automate a claims process that at the end of the day doesn't work. I hope to hear from your ideas as to how the workload management will change in the electronic setting. Can VA visualize an electronic system in which the veterans, veterans claims come not in as claims, but is broken down in various medical conditions? For the purpose of discussion, let's suppose that 13 medical condition is in a claim. These 13 medical conditions are not sent through the segmented lanes of Veterans Local Regional Office. They are sent to 13 regional offices throughout the country electronically, simultaneously being adjudicated at the same time. As you know, different ROs specialize in different medical conditions. And when you look at the different codes out there, the numerous amount of codes out there, it's very hard, I think, particularly in some areas, for an employee to know how to move those claims forward rapidly. I think challenge ROs should get the easy medical conditions, while the ROs that do a great job might want to handle the more complex conditions. And more importantly, veterans get paid as each medical condition is completed. Now, challenged the VA to think outside the box. It is an old adage that a benefit delayed is a benefit denied. Far too many veterans are waiting far too many days to receive the benefits that they have earned. We are all working towards the same end goal, timeliness, accuracy of these disposing of these claims. If we are here to be successful, we must work together to achieve a claim system that lives up to the service and the sacrifices of our veterans and soldiers as they defend this great nation of ours. So I would encourage you, Madam Undersecretary, to, as we move forward with the VBMS system, to think outside the box. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way it's always been in the past to approve these particular claims. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michaud. I want to welcome the panel that's with us this morning. It's the only panel at the witness table. This morning, General Allison Hickey, the Undersecretary for Benefits with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, we certainly appreciate your service. We thank you for being with us here this morning, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes with your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Miller, Ranking Member Michaud, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss VBA's transformation efforts and the employees that are critical to its success. I'm accompanied today by the Deputy Undersecretary for Field Operations, Diana Rubens. As a direct result of the support provided by this committee, VBA employees are completing more compensation claims than ever before in the history of VA. Over 3 million in the past 3 fiscal years, and 3 times the amount completed in 2000, while increasing the quality even in the last year by nearly 4 percentage points as well. Yet despite these efforts, too many veterans still have to wait too long to get the compensation benefits they have earned, and that is unacceptable. My testimony today will focus on how execution of our transformation plan will allow VBA to eliminate the backlog in 2015 by leveraging our greatest asset, our employees. I'd first like to discuss the inventory of claims and the factors impacting our employees' timeliness. The current inventory represents claims from veterans of all eras. The largest percentage of our claims comes from our Vietnam-era veterans, who make up 37% of the inventory and the backlog. 1990 Gulf War-era veterans make up 23%, while veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts make up only 20%. Our World War II and Korea-era veterans make up less than 10%. 39% of the inventory are original claims, those submitted by veterans claiming a disability for the very first time from VA. 61% are supplemental claims from veterans who are seeking additional benefits. In all, about half of the veterans in the total inventory and backlog are already receiving some level of compensation from VA. What's clear is the demand for this benefit is at an all-time high. In the past 4 years, we have added more than 940,000 veterans to the VA compensation rolls, which is more than the size of the active duty Army and Navy combined. Coupled with this increase are two factors that have had a significant impact on the growth of the inventory and backlog. In 2009, Secretary Shinseki made the decision to add 3 presumptive conditions for Vietnam veterans who were exposed to Agent Orange. In response, VBA dedicated 37% of our staff to do these claims, over 250,000 of them, providing $4.5 billion in retroactive benefits to 164,000 Vietnam veterans and their survivors. While this decision was absolutely the right thing to do, it did have an impact on our ability to keep up with new claims coming in the door and on the aging of claims we already had. The second factor is the increase in the complexity of the claims themselves. There has been a 200% increase over the last 10 years in original claims containing 8 or more medical issues. From 2009 to 2012, the number of medical issues inside the claims increased, and we completed 2.7 million to over 4 million last year. This 50% growth in medical issues is a truer measure of the time it takes to complete a claim, and it is having a significant impact on our production and the growth in inventory. Given the growing demand and the complexity of claims, it is clear that continuing a legacy approach to meet the needs of veterans won't work. I'm happy to report today that we have achieved momentum with the transformation plan, and that plan will improve how veterans' benefits are delivered for generations to come. And 2013 right now is the year of full deployment and change. Our transformation represents the largest single reinvention of this organization that we have ever seen, and our focus is on managing this change while sustaining production and improving quality. VBA employees are key to that success. 52% of them are veterans themselves. The productivity of this workforce and the accuracy of decisions are now being increased through new national training programs and standards. New employees attended challenge training, decide 150% more claims per day with a 30% increase in accuracy. Through process improvement design teams, VBA has launched initiatives like segmented lanes, disability benefit questionnaires, and fully developed claims, and they're showing positive results with increased implementation. The Veterans Benefit Management System is our web-based electronic claims processing solution. We've deployed the first generation of VBMS in January 2013 and have 25 stations on it today. With the integration of VBMS and the online portal e-benefits, we've achieved an end-to-end digital filing capability. Veterans can now file a claim online using a TurboTax-like model, upload their own evidence, and all within a digital environment. Mr. Chairman, our transformation plan, we're on track to achieve our goals for delivering that improved benefits delivery for veterans, and this concludes my statement. I'd be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions, and by the way, members, because we only have one panel with us today, there will be an opportunity for a second round of questioning. So I'll hold myself if you put me on a clock too. So we'll all stay at 5 minutes. First question: to date, three ROs have been closed for SET, and I'm interested in finding out what sort of training is provided to the poorly performing RO's management team in particular. You noted in career trajectory testimony that developing employees into positions of greater responsibility helps to ensure employees understand the various roles in that claims process and that institutional knowledge is preserved and enhanced. Yet, we've been told that some management currently does not even know the basic fundamental that goes into processing a claim, but they're in charge of an office. So what I'd like to hear from you, and the committee I'm sure would appreciate, is what training are these managers and directors receiving when the current option of last resort set is deployed by that office?
Thank you, Chairman, for your question. I'll start and then I'll defer to my colleague, Ms. Diana Rubens, for any further clarification. Our station enhancement training was actually a new effort that we started this year. It was frankly built upon the improvements we saw associated with our individual employee challenge training courses that we put out there. And we saw such good improvements in personnel's ability to both rate claims at a higher speed, and at a higher quality level as well, that we said, why don't we take this in an entire station model into a regional office where not only do we retrain from top to bottom those people physically touching the claim, but we also at the same time stand down for a period of time the leadership and review and go back through how to do good workflow management, how to use all the new tools that are available to you for you to do that. We go all the way up the line into the leadership environment to retrain, essentially reset, provide new information as necessary to get that regional office in good stead. I'll tell you, having done it at Oakland, we saw a 27% increase in production and an 8% increase in quality, and LA is on track showing some similar early benefits.
Secretary Kiki, thank you. I would tell you, I think that you've largely covered it. The key, if I understand the chairman's concerns in particular around workload management, the entire team is focused on supervisors, managers, leaders of the regional office to ensure they understand how we make sure that work is getting accomplished efficiently and effectively with the resources on station.
So that's how you train managers and directors when a RO has been closed.
Chairman, thanks for the opportunity to even add more. One of the things that we have done in Oakland that we continue to do when we're involved in a set-like training where we're trying to help improve and boost both productivity and quality in a regional office is we bring in the area directors, which we've done in Oakland. The area director for Oakland actually repositioned himself for the entire time that Oakland was going through this effort to provide increased oversight, increased coaching, mentoring of the leaders in that organization. We've done the same thing in Baltimore. The area director for the eastern area has also positioned herself in a way in which she's providing increased oversight, very deliberate oversight for those stations. The other thing I will tell you that I have done recently, we started this process January of this year. I've now stood up a new VBA stat process where every single regional office has a responsibility to come and sit at a table with me for an entire day, digging into their data, into their performance challenges, into their successes. I have 10 regional offices at the same time with me. We go deep down, dive into their data. Where they have challenges, we ask them to please produce an action plan, and we assist them with doing that. They also are sitting at the table with other regional offices about their size and complement and their mission kind of capabilities, where we get to share best practices. You know, why does this particular regional office do very well? What are you doing in that environment that we could use over here? The third thing we've done, is, both in Oakland, LA, and now in Baltimore, is we sent in some folks who do this very well in the organization. By example, we've taken one of our best service center managers and put them in Baltimore to really dig in and help coach a service center manager at that level as well, so that they can gain from that person's experience in another location. And then if there's any other things, if Ms. Rubens would like to add, I
appreciate it. I have 6 seconds left, and I'm going to yield to Mr. Michaud, but as I prepare to yield, I want you to think very carefully, have any of your regional officers been a failure? And I now yield to Mr. Michaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. General Hickey, well, I know one of the issues of concerns that was actually brought up by our Senate colleagues, also brought up is that information regarding the transformation initiatives in the performance of VA's regional office is not being shared. Is there any information that you use to determine the effectiveness of the various transformation initiatives that you have not shared with this committee?
So thank you, Congressman Michaud, for your question. I also thank you for spending an entire day with me up in Togus after your selection for this ranking member position, and so that we could walk you through each and every one of them, and then also show you how a segmented lane looks in practice and show you the benefits of fully developed claims. Those kinds of issues. So I appreciate that. Let me just say I do measure, the productivity the same way I measure productivity every single day, the same way we present to you in our Monday morning workload reports, the same way we produce and give not just you, not just veterans, but every American in any state that wants to look and see how VA is doing through our completely transparent website called Aspire. The other thing we do is we present all of that data through our performance reporting in the performance.gov environment as well. There is nothing I have that is not shared, but if you believe that you would like me to specifically go and dig something out, I will. As we gain in the production, you will start seeing the numbers that I see on a regular basis have some impact. You'll start seeing overall production as it does today, frankly. Today, we have done 7,500 more claims this year than we did last year at this time. Today, we have 10,000 claims less waiting in inventory. A small number, albeit, but I've also seen a 3% increase in our overall production across the board. Is that big? No. But I would remind you, we are making a major reinvention of this organization change right now, and our employees are changing while they're producing, and producing at higher quality levels than ever before.
Thank you. Can you provide us with the information that you are looking at in regards to your performance metrics? I don't expect it today, but if you can provide it for the record.
I will absolutely do that, Congressman. Thank you for the request. I'll take that.
And you had mentioned the Aspire programs, but it's my understanding that hasn't been updated since January. Is that correct?
Congressman Michaud, there is a lag in data that somebody has to pull it all together and actually acquire it and then load it into the system. There's about a 1-month lag while we make sure all the numbers are accurate at that point in time, but it's about a 1-month lag. Yep. We usually are updating it by the 10th of the following month, which is when we have a majority of the data all culled together.
In your testimony, you talked about the employees, the dedication of your employees' mission is evidenced by the very low turnover rate, only 7% annually. I assume that's a national average. Is that correct?
That is, Congressman.
Yep. Do you know, and it's been one of the issues I was very interested in, if you look at some of the poor performing sites, the Los Angeles site, the New York site, which are poor compared to the St. Paul site or the Togus site, which are pretty good. Do you have that broken down as far as the turnover rates in these particular areas? And if not, could you provide that for the committee?
Congressman Michaud, I don't have the broken down ones by regional offices, but I can certainly provide that to the committee. What I would like to say, though, is this up front. I have 20,000 employees in VBA that are so dedicated to this mission. I mentioned it that 52% of them are veterans themselves. What I didn't tell you in the opening statement is about 98% of them are a direct family member of a veteran. These people come to work every single day because they are committed to this noble mission of taking care of the men and women who have served in uniform. So I know they're working hard. I've been out to 36 regional offices, and everywhere I go, they tell me how hard they're working. They show me how much they're committed. I walk around the regional office. I see the pictures of all of the people that they show up every single day to honor and do their work for. They've been in mandatory overtime, not complaining, but doing it because it's necessary in order to meet this growing demand of 10 years at war, of relaxing PTSD, of opening 9 conditions for Gulf War veterans, of doing the Agent Orange, of increasing our outreach and access extensively. 6,300 more events we do a year now than we did in 2008. And by the way, in the last year, we went from 239,000 veterans we touched and talked to 609,000. And we are doing a good job of that, but with it comes additional claims.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Michaud. Out of those 20,000 employees you have, how many were fired last year for not doing their job?
Chairman Miller, I apologize. Chairman Miller, I don't have that number explicitly. I can, I don't even know. I probably could go find it and get it for you, and I'm happy to do that if you'd like.
I wish you would. Thank you very
Okay.
much, Ms. Maworski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony this morning, for Undersecretary, for being here. As we've listened to this story unfold, and I'm a freshman, so I've heard this story unfold for only the last couple of months, but the story is about this brave warrior sitting here in this wheelchair. That's the story. That's why we're meeting today. And, you know, in my little district in Indiana, I have 52,000 veterans just in my district, let alone the extended families, because it's such a family issue. And my question is on this issue of accountability. What if you don't reach these goals by 2015? It just seems to be a continuing story, and I'm shocked at the chairman reading that this was a 1994 story in his opening statements. This has been going on, and I know we hear of the issue that this is about Agent Orange and this is about, you know, the Vietnam vets, and yet we have a disengagement coming. We have a drawdown coming, which is going to be a significant influx of new veterans. We are opening this to women now in combat in the next couple of years, and can't even address women's issues now, let alone the influx of women. What happens if you don't meet these goals of 2015? We just continue to roll along, and where is the accountability line drawn? Because the story in the face of our issue is right there.
Thank you, Congresswoman Walorski. I appreciate your taking this position on this committee. It's a very vital committee to ensure we care for our veterans across the nation. And I'm particularly aware of the issues that you are dealing with in Indiana. We work very closely in Indiana with your Adjutant General, who has been an enormous help for helping us find service treatment records, find personnel records, all of which are some of the most difficult things for us to do a timely claim. And so I want to just acknowledge his contribution, his relationship with our Indianapolis Regional Office leadership as well. I also know that you have had a very large redeployment over the last year and a half of Indiana National Guardsmen who have been fighting our nation's war forward in the fight, as has the entire National Guard across the nation. When that happens and we have a sudden surge in the system, we do have, there are implications of that. We try to work it really hard, and I will tell you Indiana's numbers are going in the right direction now because we're getting a hold of that. So I'm excited about that. We are positioned with this transformation plan built by not just VBA, but I'll tell you, many of the great ideas come from employees out there who have been looking and doing this work for a long time saying, this doesn't make any sense, let's change it, let's do something better. And so many of the initiatives, like simplified notification letter, like disability benefit questionnaires, are in there because employees recommended it. Many are in there because our Veteran Service Organization, who I invited to help build the plan, they're inside the planning horizon. Many of them suggested ideas that are included in here, like further growing the fully developed claim process, where we have today 54,000 of those claims we've done in 108 days because we had the help of the VSOs, who are 60% of them represent our veterans coming in the door. At that point of contact, when they're filling out that claim with that veteran, they can say, okay, you're claiming this thing. Do you have a piece of medical evidence for that? Give me your DD-214. I can connect the dots. I can now give VA your full and complete capabilities, so when it comes in the door, I'm not doing that long hunt it takes us to find all that medical evidence. The plan we have has been measured in a pilot format inside a live regional office, with two requirements right up front. It had to have a VSO in it, and it had to have one of our labor partners in it. Right up front, because I wanted to know any implications anybody saw to failure in that. And I believe that I have the support of the VSOs on the plan.
And with all due respect, and I'm sorry, just because of the time, I just wanted to ask another question, follow up here though. But the accountability of this by 2015, if this doesn't happen, what's the contingency plan? Because historically, if you just look at the data, it hasn't happened. So what is the backup plan if this VBA doesn't come through like it's promised to come through?
So thank you, Congresswoman, for the follow-up question. I will tell you, historically, we have never had a paperless IT system before. We have never been in a segmented lane process where we have an express lane where if you're a veteran with 1 or 2 medical issues, it's kind of like going to the grocery store on Sunday. You just want a carton of eggs. You don't want to get behind me who shops once a month and I have 2 cartloadfuls. So we have a lane now where 30% of our claims can go through in a much faster process. I've measured that. You can take 100 days off those claims. We've seen it since October for the regional offices who are in that. I will tell you, today, this month, all our regional offices will be in that new segmented lane model 9 months ahead of schedule. Why? Because I saw an increase of about 10% rate of production because we were in those different lane models. And by the way, from a people perspective, I can now target, this gets to Congressman Michaud's idea, I can now target really complex claims to people who have lots of deep experience in those claims in that special operations lane we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Michaud. General Hickey, I represent a large rural district in Arizona with many veterans, and they have to travel hundreds of miles sometimes and bear the expense of an overnight stay out of pocket. And I have a caseworker who's devoted specifically to taking care of veterans' needs. Since I took office in January, we have taken in 17 cases of veterans facing backlog. The majority of the backlog is over 2 years. We have even heard reports of veterans who passed away while waiting for their claims to be processed. We are hearing from men and women who are stuck in the system. They are struggling. We know their names and we know their stories. Ending the VA backlog is not just about boosting statistics. It's about bettering lives. It's about fighting for those who have sacrificed for all of us. My question is, have you specifically looked at the obstacles that rural veterans face in the claims process? Are you addressing that? And if so, how?
So thank you very much, Congresswoman. I'm sorry, I apologize for that, Kilpatrick, and I appreciate your sensitivity to our rural veterans. Let me tell you, in this transformation, it includes a way in which you never have to show up to an RO again to get help from us. And the way it does, frankly, and it exists today. This is not PowerPoint. It exists today. In fact, I've had 2,000 claims without even advertising it exist today, and that is if we have a veteran who's on e-benefits, that's our new DoD VA shared portal, they can today go online like you all do your taxes online with TurboTax. Today they can go online, they can file a claim. It doesn't make them type it in a form even anymore. It's a question-answer kind of thing where they get all the information online. They can now today upload their own medical evidence. Don't even have to ship off the paper to us anymore. Save that medical evidence and that claim. By the way, never before have you had the ability to save date of claim, which translates into money for veterans, instantly. We do now. That goes directly into our new paperless IT system. Rather than that veteran who has to, and I appreciate this, I commute long times, but not nearly the distances they have to. But they don't have to get in a car to deliver it. They don't have to get in a car to go to a public contact center to find out what the status of it is. It comes right back to e-benefits and tells them on that e-benefits site, what's the status of their claim? What stage is it in? What do we need still from them that we don't have in the evidence that they've provided? Not only have we created that in existence today, we've also created the Stakeholder Enterprise Portal, because I'm going nowhere in this transformation without the support and help of our veteran service organizations. We have to have them in this process. So we have built a stakeholder enterprise portal that mirrors e-benefits that allows our VSOs to file those claims on behalf of people that they hold the power of attorney for. And then they can upload the evidence, and I never get the paper in the door. So all of that exists today. The other thing I will tell you that will help our rural veterans, and I know you were describing, I think, more of a situation with their health, where they go for a health appointment. is the new telehealth efforts, and that is not my area, but I'm certainly more than willing to get you more information on the growing telehealth efforts that my counterparts in the health administration are doing as well. So we are trying to get online. We've clearly heard from our veterans. 73% of us tell us that they want us to meet them online. So we're doing that. We provided a provision for doing that. I'll tell you, my data says they've moved there. In fact, I had 10.7 million contacts in 2010, and that was 98% by phone. Today, in 2012, I have 31.9 million contacts, 32% by phone, 68% by e-benefits. So they're coming up online.
Thank you, General. My time's almost out, but I want to ask one other question. Yesterday, I spent time with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who are calling for a commission devoted specifically to figuring out how we get rid of this backlog. What are your thoughts about such a commission?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I will tell you that I have a lot of oversight and very effective oversight today. I have the oversight of this committee, which I really appreciate. I have the oversight of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and I have many subcommittees that provide us oversight on a daily basis. I have the oversight of the Inspector General on a real regular basis and the oversight of GAO on a real regular basis. I believe that we have a lot of great people already looking into how we're doing this and providing us great ideas and also providing us challenges. And I think that the oversight that has been presented is comprehensive, and I look forward to continuing working with the existing
oversight.
Thank you,
General, and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kirkpatrick, and I also appreciate you bringing up the IAVA call for a commission from the President to look at this backlog, and I support their efforts on that as well. I would like to ask unanimous consent from this committee to allow the majority whip, Mr. McCarthy, to ask questions out of order. Are there any objections? Without none, Mr. McCarthy, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, I want to thank the chairman and thank this committee for letting me be a part. Undersecretary, I have a few questions, if I may. First, let me preface with my concerns. I don't sit on this committee, but I'm here because I have a great concern. I may be the majority whip, but this is not a partisan issue. And all the data that I have seen, I'm frustrated that it took a frustration of Congress to have an audit to find out this answer. I'm frustrated with the direction of where we're going, so let's walk through the GAO report. And if we could be specific about some of the things that we've asked to do here. I know the GAO recommended the VA develop a robust plan for all of its new initiatives, including performance goals to keep individuals accountable for the top down. Do you first agree with the findings and the recommendations?
So thank you, Congressman McCarthy. I will tell you that I had some disagreements with the GAO report, and I lodged those, but I'm happy to answer your questions if you'd like.
Okay, so you disagree with the findings?
I did disagree with some of the findings in the GAO report.
Okay, what specific steps on the time frame of the VA going to take to correct the problems that the GAO found?
So Congressman McCarthy, let me just tell you what we've already done in terms of where we already were, in terms of some of the things that they might have found. And so that was partly my reaction to the GAO report. Things we already were doing were actually then further documented in the report. For example, we do have new performance standards that we have negotiated with our labor partners. We will continue to upgrade those performance standards as we move forward.
So you find it acceptable, the number of days in the process?
Congressman, no, I don't. None of us at VA find it acceptable that there are too many days and it takes too long to get a veteran the answer to their claim. But we are well on our way on a path with a good, solid plan vetted by many people.
So this new plan of yours, when will it be able to be finished?
Congressman McCarthy, we have provided that plan to the Congress here in January. It's full and complete, very detailed, specific milestones and the like. I didn't wait to execute on that plan. I was already executing on the plan to make sure we didn't have any daylight between when we all the time that we had to try and fix this problem. I will tell you right now today, we are working on our very oldest claims. As soon as we finished the Agent Orange Niemer caseload, we took the people who had been doing it, 37% of my workforce, we took and pointed them back to the claims that had been waiting, our very oldest claims, over 2-year-old claims, that are right now today. You will see it. You're probably wondering why my numbers are going up. It's because my regional offices were given direction to go do those oldest claims. I could have made my numbers look better. I didn't choose to do that. It wasn't the right and integritous thing to do by our veterans who'd been waiting. I could have made that number look better by simply saying to our regional offices, only do new claims, and then only those days would have hit that average. That's not the way we are with our veterans. So we are doing old claims, 2-year claims right now, which is inflating that number that you see in that average days to complete. The other thing I will tell you is the other thing we did was we repointed capability.
I know I only have 5 minutes, and I understand here, but I want to get to the crux of the problem. Is your productivity in the time you've been there, has it risen or lowered?
So, Congressman, our productivity has gone to the ability to rate 1 million claims, record level, historical level for VBA in all of its history.
So let me just go to the core. If I go to completed claims per field employee, has it increased or decreased in the time frame of your leadership?
Congressman, we have done 74% more claims, increased over 2000.
Do we have the graph here? Maybe you can clarify the data that I have. In 1997, we were doing 136 claims per field employee. Today, that number is 73. Is that data wrong? Or do you disagree with that data?
I disagree with that data, Congressman. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
1997, I was potentially doing more claims per FTE, but I was also at 59% quality. Not something anyone on this committee wants me to ever go back to again, not something our VSOs want me to ever go back to again. And last year, even doing 1 million claims, we actually increased our quality by almost 4 percentage points.
Then why in the LA regional office, why did you have to go a station enhancement training where you shut down the entire facility to retrain the staff this January?
Congressman McCarthy, one of the things that we learned in setting up what is now called challenge training for us, which is part of this transformation plan, we did not have very good national level curriculum tested kinds of training that we were executing on prior to my arriving here. We do now, and so we are providing that benefit to stations.
So is the station enhancement training, was that not taken up because the claim process was so bad in filling it out? I mean, why would you shut down the entire office for an entire day if the process was not going correctly?
Congressman, we wanted to make sure we gave every advantage of every training and skill growth opportunity to every employee in LA, because I know they want to be very, very good at helping the veterans that they serve, the families and survivors as well. We didn't want to just say, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe they had learned something wrong, and we wanted to correct that if there was an opportunity.
So what is it? What was the decision that made you shut it down for the entire day? Where did you see the problem? Was the claims not being done correctly?
So the problems, the reason where we started station enhancement training was in Oakland to begin with. And Oakland, after going through its station enhancement training, saw a production increase of 27% and a quality increase of 8%. That is why I said, let's go to the next station that's most challenged, and why we went to LA to do the same thing. We learned there was goodness in doing that kind of training, in retraining the force, many of which who have not had the benefit of the new challenge training.
One thing I have always learned, it's always good to have data. The data that shows under this work, your productivity is down, the performance is not there, and that goes to the core of leadership. If you were to correct this overall problem, it's going to take the leadership to make it happen. The turnover rate is too high, the process takes too long, the correction to the problem, I think you're avoiding many of the answers that to make it all happen. I think that takes from a leadership down to make sure this gets corrected. And I will tell you from the instance of where I'm at, this is a core issue, and this is not a partisan issue, and this is not something that this committee will wait to have happen. If I have seen these numbers before, it should never take another investigation from Congress to find these problems, and we will not sit back to have them corrected. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Takano?
Ms. Hickey, going back to the recent press articles have highlighted that veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan who live in metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago wait twice as long as their counterparts for their claims to be processed. What is being done in these urban areas to properly staff as well as recruit and retain quality employees?
Thank you, Congressman Takano, for the question. I know I said it in my initial statement, but I would like to sort of reiterate it here. Of the backlog and the inventory, 20% of that backlog and inventory are our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. The things we have done for those veterans are, you don't need a claim done even by VBA to get immediate access to health care. Any veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan, who have medical issues they need to deal with, can immediately go to the medical center and get 5 years worth of medical care to move forward. And you don't have to wait on me anymore. Actually, after the latest update to the 9/11 GI Bill automation, we're now, we are doing claims, the bulk of the work of our claims, in less than 6 days to keep our kids in school. You don't even have to wait there anymore. You don't have to wait for VA home loan. What I will tell you in California, many years ago, and I can't even tell you which administration it was under, there was a decision to build a resourcing model for VBA regional offices that essentially said, if you did good last year, you get more FTE this year. That doesn't make any sense to me. We've been restructuring that resource model. I believe it should be based on demand. It should be based on veteran demand. So in the case of Oakland and LA, I've actually increased in this last year FTE in both sites. So that is one of the things we're working through right now to sort of restructure and redistribute our resources that this committee and others so generously provide us.
My colleague from California mentioned the high turnover rate. I understand there's a high turnover rate among veteran service representatives, with one reason being that, he didn't mention this, but is a possible reason that the position is capped at GS 10 level. In terms of career growth and incentives, has there been any effort to delineate the different tiers of VSRs to accommodate those with more expertise and to better incentivize VSRs to stay in their current positions?
So, Congressman Takano, great question, and something we've been talking about inside of VBA. And I noted that our AFGE leadership would like us to look at that. I talked to the AFGE leadership, and I'm interested in having that conversation to see if there are better ways for us to describe how those people do the work. What I can tell you is, I don't think many people understand how complex that work really is. You're not just rubber stamping a rating and saying, yep, I see it, check mark, there it goes. There is serious adjudication, wisdom, judgment that goes into those processes. It's not easy to go find medical evidence. It's not easy to find the service records for the nature and character of your service. Either. And that's what our VSRs do every day. That's hard work, and it's complicated work. And one of the things I will tell you is the new VBMS system capability. In the past, you had to remember that as a VSR in your head. All those different things you had to check, you had to remember it in your head. Now in the new VBMS capability, we're giving you tools so you don't have to remember it. It tells you, it prompts you, it makes you look for those things that you know you need to do. One of the errors we get challenged with in terms of our quality is the inferred medical conditions, like, you have diabetes, but that could mean we also need to look at all these other 13 things. We would miss those inferred things. Why? Because somebody had to remember that in their head. Today in VBMS, you don't remember it in your head anymore. The minute you put that medical code in there, it immediately populates the inferred conditions, and helping a VSR to know I need to ask for those exams, those medical exams, and get that medical information.
Now, you mentioned the increased caseload. I hadn't understood. Can you remind me just what the Agent Orange claims, what is the significance of that addition to the claims load of VA?
Absolutely, Congressman, and I'll tell you, if you could see a chart that I have that I'm happy to share with this committee, the spike that happened when we overnight put 260,000 Agent Orange claims into our inventory had a significant impact. It took 37%, all of our surge capability out of the workforce, leaving 63% of our employees to do the entire rest of the bucket. That was a significant impact, and we did them in a really good, and I know there was a testimony last week in the panel that followed me in the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, where the person, the legal representative stated we did them very, very well. We wanted to make sure we did them timely and very well. Previous times, we didn't. They got handed back to us, and we were told to do them again. We didn't want to do that. The impact has been 260,000 claims worth in backlog, or half the backlog. It had a significant impact, but absolutely, please, absolutely know the right thing to do by our Vietnam veterans who have waited more than 50 years for an answer for a condition that they suffered in war.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
And again, nobody on this committee is questioning opening those presumptions up one bit, but I think it's important to note that, number one, VA knew that they were getting those numbers into the system, did not prepare for the surge, did nothing. And that's what the concern of this committee is, that there's no surge capacity should we have another presumption signed off by the Secretary for another illness within the system. But I think it's also important to note, you keep focusing on the record million claims that you've been able to produce in a year. How about the record 900,000 claims that are in the system today? Goes both ways. Mr. Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Hickey, I look forward to the number because I know Secretary Shinseki always talks about accountability, and the number that the chairman requested about how many people have actually been held accountable with their job. There's a fine threshold between being able to train somebody and someone not being able to do their job, which kind of leads to my next question. We always talk about training. Is it internal, all this training we do, or are you bringing people from the private sector that do insurance claims and the like? Who sets the criteria for all this training?
Thank you, Congressman Runyon, for your question. And let me address the first one, which is we have, like every other agency, federal agency, and even industry. When I was industry for 3 years, we used the same identical process called a performance improvement plan for employees who were having a difficult time meeting their quality or performance standards. That performance improvement plan is designed to be very collaborative, in writing, working with the employee to help them succeed. That's the desire, is to take a really good employee, find out where they need additional help, and then help them succeed in coming off that PIP and being a valuable contributing member of our organization. So I will tell you, we do PIPs all the time. People graduate from those PIPs. Some people don't. And when they don't, we do a couple of things. One, we look back in their personnel record and say, were you fully successful at a lower level doing a different job, and can we offer you that opportunity to keep your passion for veterans, their families, and survivors in the organization? If you, and likely you would not have made it up if you had not been there in the first place. We will offer oftentimes that opportunity. The second thing that we do look at is we do look at terminations and people leave us. And sometimes that is just a fit issue. That exists in any company, in any organization around the world. So I do say we do have a process, and that is an accountability process that we work closely with our employees.
Well, from the get-go, when you're hiring somebody, though, is there a baseline threshold to even get their foot in the door?
So absolutely, we have requirements for hiring. In fact, we've increased some of those requirements of late with an exposure to the work, because we will sometimes find people think it's a different experience to come in and do a rating claim. They think that they're going to interact a lot with that veteran when they're really not having that daily interaction with the veteran. They're really working hard on getting those claims done. And so once they get into the system, they kind of go, this isn't what I expected. So we've done a big push across the country. So when you are looking at a job in VBA in one of these rating environments, that you get to come hang out and see what it's like and talk to people who do it and get a very good feel for this work to make sure it's a really good fit.
But is there a competency exam or anything that they would have to go through?
There is not at this point in time, I believe, a competency again, but I will defer to Ms. Rubens to talk about any further of that.
Good morning, Chairman Runyon. Yes, there is a process that we're beginning to put in place. We've been working hard with our HR folks to say what kind of assessment fits within the overall OPM requirements and allowable opportunities to us to ensure that we get not only those folks that are so committed to the veterans, but have some other baseline abilities that they bring to us. So we are building that now.
I think we all get that. I mean, everybody in this room is committed to veterans, but ultimately as leaders of the organization, you have to put the best people in place to execute the plan. And I think that's really where we're dropping the ball here. Talking about this, and obviously what we're in as government, we're in the business of customer service. That's really what it is. And Secretary Hickey, you brought up the phrase interacting with veterans. Is there any metrics in dealing with the customer service aspect of it? How do you measure that? And I hear the frustration each and every day of someone being passed on to 9,000 different hold messages and being told to call back. That frustration and the accountability of that, and how do you actually apply that?
So thank you, Congressman Runyon, for your question. And there are. In fact, we use J.D. Powers to assess our customer satisfaction with the services that we provide. Up until recently, we did that primarily in our call center environments. I will tell you that our J.D. Power score was 745. 763 is the national, index for really good customer service on a call center. So we're not far off from the national index for that in our call centers. That doesn't mean it's not frustrating. I totally understand that. It doesn't mean it's not frustrating when you are one of the ones that are not getting through in a prompt time. And I'll tell you, we have, under this transformation plan, built 2 additional capabilities to relieve some of that frustration. And our veterans are taking us up on that kind of capability in record numbers. One is virtual hold, which means you literally just elect the option, you hang up the phone, you go get breakfast, you do your piece of work, you feed the dog, you do whatever, run a load of laundry, or get ready to work, or go back to your work on your computer, and we call you back. I know it works. 93% of the time we reconnect with you. The only reason why it isn't 100% of the time is because you leave whatever phone you were waiting at. The other feature we now have that our veterans are increasingly electing is scheduled callback. And this is an industry best practice, and that is you elect a time in the next week where we will call you at that time. I know it works. I've done it to test the system multiple times. It always calls me. Frankly, I'm always surprised. I forgot I scheduled the appointment, but luckily I always put it on my cell phone so it finds me anywhere. Both of those 2 things have helped relieve the pressure on the calls. The other thing that's frankly helped relieve the pressure on the calls is a move from calling to e-benefits. We have 63% of our contacts now happening on e-benefits. So they're moving from a phone call into an electronic environment, because the biggest reason they call us, and you know this, and I expect it, is to check on the status of their claim, which they can now see on e-benefits.
Thank you. Yield back, Chairman.
Ms. Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for coming to testify today. It's nice to see you again. I don't mean to sound like I'm piling on, but I have to talk about what's going on in Nevada. The regional office that serves my district of Las Vegas is located in Reno, which in itself makes no sense to me since most of the people and the veterans are in Las Vegas as opposed to Reno, but maybe all the computerization will help make that better. Also, the average time it takes to complete a claim out of the Reno office is almost 500 days. And of the members of this committee, I think that's about the worst. I just want to get you maybe after this hearing or something to give me some information of what's happening there to address that time frame. And then two questions. One, are there benchmarks for the regional offices? Or are you just going to wait till 2015 to see if they're meeting your goals? Because by then it might be too late and benchmarks might be helpful. And second, while this committee is here to provide oversight, we're also want to help you to do better to help our veterans. Do you have any suggestions of things that we can do to make this process of getting rid of the backlog easier or quicker?
Thank you, Congresswoman Titus. And I've been out to the regional office in Reno, and I think I'm headed back out there to talk to the nation's county service officers here this summer, so I'll look forward to seeing it again. Let me first start by answering your Reno versus Las Vegas question, which is we may have the office sitting in Reno, but we have intake sites in Las Vegas where veterans in the Las Vegas area can get us that information. But frankly, under this transformation plan that's real today, that's not PowerPoint and made up stuff, they can go online through e-benefits, file their claim, upload their evidence, and get it all the way into VBMS, and they can come back and check on the status of it, right? And e-benefits never travel anywhere. The second thing that I will also say is as we have looked at the Reno problem, part of what happened in Reno, straight up front, and it has more of an impact in a really small office like Reno is when you have an employee or two that in a rater or two that moves in the case they've had, one for family reasons to a different state where they actually joined us in a different regional office in a different state, and another for health reasons, and when you have people who retire and that all piles on at the same time, that creates a problem in terms of being able to continue production. I will tell you, Reno has moved forward in terms of its staffing, and it's got those positions being filled already. I will also say, though, a new person versus somebody who's been there 20 years, there's a different level of a coming up to speed that occurs in that process. What we have done, we have married Reno with the Boise office. Boise office has some capacity to assist Reno, so they are taking on those cases. The other thing I'll let you know is it doesn't mean every case is happening in 500 days. What Reno has been doing for the last 4 months or so is doing very old claims in the system that I have committed them to do, so that we can help those veterans who've been waiting as we did those Agent Orange claims. So I will ask Ms. Rubens if she has anything else to add to that discussion.
Thank you, ma'am. I would add, in addition to some of those things that the Undersecretary mentioned, Reno is also coming up in our next stat review. We'll be able to work very closely with them to dig down into what other things we can do to support them as we look for opportunities to ensure that the Nevada veterans are being served properly.
So do you have benchmarks then for the regional offices?
We absolutely do, Congresswoman, for not just that, but 93 other different metrics that they have to hit. Because a regional office doesn't even just have a compensation responsibility. It also has a vocational rehabilitation and employment responsibility. It has a loan guarantee responsibility. It may very well have an education regional processing office or all those.
Let me ask you something else real quick. I know you mentioned in the Senate hearing about some deal you've made with the Department of Defense to get information more quickly, because right now it takes, let's see, 25% takes more than 60 days to get the evidence and 13% takes more than 90 days. Can you elaborate on that deal? Are there some checkpoints to make sure it's working, or what if they don't comply?
Congresswoman Titus, I appreciate your question and the opportunity to talk about this, because I consider this a really good news, and not just the DOD agreements, but I would also like to just share IRS and Social Security have made game-changing agreements with us and are already proceeding forward to make it happen. By example, many of the claims that we have to do require information that Social Security or IRS has that we had in the past only gotten on an annual basis and never with a 3-year back look, which is what we're required to do for a decision in those cases. What I have now agreement, and I totally appreciate the leadership at both of those two agencies, I'm going to get that weekly now. That fundamentally changes that piece of the evidence hunt. With DOD, I appreciate very strongly my new partner over in DOD who has been working some of these very difficult issues, one of which is the evidence that we use to decide a claim largely is owned by DOD. In most cases it is. VHA's medical records that we use to typically do supplemental claims, those are the second time and on cases, I can get to those really easy. I have access into that system. They're electronic. I electronically pull them. I don't even make paper anymore out of them, and I can just ingest them. DOD has now given me an agreement, signed the memorandum of understanding, are stepping out forward. They've stood up cells in the Army and the Air Force, and the Navy is doing it a slightly different way, but they're doing it, where they are going out and not only gathering all the medical records, but they are now going out and getting what they've never had in the medical record in the past, which is the TRICARE records, which is the contract medical records. They're pulling it all together. They're certifying to me that they have all the medical evidence in that record. And they're signing their name on it, and they're giving it to me so that I don't have to go back and keep doing what I have, which is you asked about legislation, which I have in legislation since the Veterans Claim Assistance Act of 2000. I have to exhaustively look for something that we don't own and never owned in the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I can follow on with Ms. Titus's questions regarding your testimony last week before the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, you had in fact talked about the issues of getting records from DOD. I think basically you said 3 out of 5 times when you have an old file. You noted that the record issue is a problem, and you further stated in your testimony that you were bound by law to wait 60 days after initially asking DOD before an RO can make that request again. Is that true?
Thank you, Chairman Miller, for your question. I'll tell you that I've learned a little bit more. I've been here 16 months, so every day I learn a little bit more. The law is in the VCAA, but it doesn't specifically prescribe the dates we have. And I'll tell you what it does do. There are 2 words in the VCAA law. One says, for everything I get that's private, medical, all the rest of that, I have to reasonably go get it in a reasonable period of time. In the same law, it also says, for federal records, I have to exhaustively look for all of that evidence. Yeah, in the period following the VCAA effort, the legal experts got together and said...
I'm sorry, my question was, is it correct that you have to wait 60 days by law or not?
It's correct that I have to do something exhaustively searching, which is
it correct
defined
that you
in law
have
by
to wait
60
days or not?
It is not in law that
It
says
is not part of,
60 days.
but you said that it was. Let me remind you that it is in your own M21, Part 1, Chapter 1, Section C. You can make that change yourself. So it never was law, but you made it appear that legislatively it was an impediment to you being able to do your job, when in fact you can make that change yourself. I'd like to recognize now Mr. Huelskamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Undersecretary, you've mentioned accountability and data and penalties. One thing I want to ask, follow up my colleagues' questions about the regional offices and your benchmarks. What penalties do you have for those regional offices that do not meet those requirements?
Thank you, Congressman Huelskamp, for your question. The penalty is there are no bonuses for those leaders. The penalty is there is a less bonus structure for a big, wide, RO level capability. The penalty is, frankly, bigger than that. The penalty is those great employees get up every single day wanting to be the very best regional office in the country, serving their veterans, their family members, and their survivors, and they don't feel good when they know
do the bonuses you're referencing all the employees or just the senior managers?
Largely the senior managers, but even in the ranks below GS-12 and below,
and I appreciate that. Let me follow up question on that. Would you provide for the committee the listing of those bonuses for the regional managers that you provide in the last 5 years? Can you do that for us?
I can provide 11 and earlier. I cannot provide yet 12 because the Secretary has not finalized his decision on those bonuses.
Fiscal year
12.
12?
They're still working on. The secretary has not finalized his decision
If
on those.
if the gentleman would yield for just a minute, I do have, out of 57 VBA SES employees that were evaluated in 2011, 30 received a performance award. I don't know who, but out of those 30, the awards range from $7,372 to $23,091.
Pretty substantial. And if you follow up, then would provide additional information on the regions those folks served in, and so we can match those to possibly past benchmarks. But one other question that I think is fundamental here is the issue of data. We heard from the GAO last week that in certain parts of your agency that there's data falsification occurring. And can you tell me how many of employees in your division that have been penalized or punished for falsifying data in the last 3 to 4 years?
So, Congressman Hulskamp, I'm not aware of a data integrity problem in my regional office. So, if you have something in specific,
well, you might look at the GAO report.
I'm happy to
discuss
take it to the record.
And according to VA table of penalties, number 26 deals with falsification of data, and still waiting for a response from the VA, because this whole approach and the benchmarks and all your discussion here is centered on accurate data. And if we have employees that are actually falsifying data, whether it's in your division or others as well, ma'am, you would agree that our whole discussion here is for naught if we have inaccurate data. Is that correct?
Congressman Hulskamp, I will take your concern back for the record. I
asked you a question. Do you think that that this discussion here is data-driven, and if there's falsification of data, as the GAO has outlined, that lends a little credence to the arguments here about benchmarks and progress?
So ICARE starts with integrity, and I believe that everything we do comes from a point of integrity first.
Okay. So will you provide and find out if there's been any penalties or folks have been found?
I will take that for the record, Congressman.
Okay.
I don't have the data.
Okay, I appreciate that. One other thing about data, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to get information here. I'll re-ask my question, and maybe you can provide that, because apparently budget experts at higher levels of the VA have yet to find out answers to, I think, about 20 different questions about VA conferences, lavish expenditures, and travels that have been an issue for months, and apparently the VA cannot find the data for that. Apparently they can find data here. They can't find data for numerous other things we asked. So have you been asked by your superiors to provide budget information, or is that in someone else's responsibility to decide how you spend money on conferences and those types of expenditures?
So, Congressman Hulskamp, I will tell you, inside of VA and VBA, we are scrutinizing every single conference we're doing, down to the paperclip. I've mentioned before our challenge training. It's an 8-week-long course. It's an intensive course where we bring our folks to. It's probably my major investment in terms of training in that level.
Where does that training take place, ma'am?
It takes place largely in the Baltimore Academy, but when I exceed the Baltimore Academy's capability for classes, I will centralize a class close to where we have a large population of people who are attending. I'll also tell you I have tested one time, and so we were looking closely at it, whether I can reduce the cost of that challenge training by seeing if I can do more of a blended learning option.
I'm about out of time. I appreciate that. I was just trying to get some data from your superiors, and it's very difficult to provide oversight or actually to be able to trust the VA when they refuse to answer questions on basic budget data, and I look forward to a response from your superiors. One last question, if I might, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned old claims of 2 years. What's the oldest claim you have sitting in the system, and can you provide that information or the range of claims older than 2 years?
I can tell you 4.1% of my backlog is older than 2 years. I can tell you that my oldest claim is in a regional office that is 10 years old. I can tell you the reason it is 10 years old is because a new claim was filed in September of last year. And when our raters were going through it, noticed that 10 years ago that veteran filed for a condition that had one of those inferred things that we could have found, and we did not see it then. And they did not appeal it or anything else, but we saw it. And so the integritous thing to do was for us to say, we've got to give that guy 10 years back capability for that claim they filed, but didn't even recognize we didn't even do 10 years ago. That we own that time, even though it came in September of last year. We say we're responsible 10 years ago for the mistake we made.
Thank you, Madam Undersecretary. Appreciate that. I yield back my time.
Mr. Walz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Hickey, good to see you again, and thank you for being here. I'm sorry I left for part of the time. We were actually overvoting in the Ag Committee on regulating credit default swaps and derivatives, so I'm actually optimistic here on this side compared to there. But first and foremost, I'm appreciative of your service. I'm appreciative of the chairman and the ranking member for not giving an inch on this issue, for understanding that those folks that are setting out there, this is the issue. It is critical. It's about our moral responsibility. It's about our national readiness, and you, of all people, know that, General Hickey, so I thank you. I'm not going to defend what we haven't been able to get done. I do want to submit a letter from the VFW to the record that I received today. This is one quote from that I would say. The VFW believes Ms. Hickey is an integral part of the solution to finally breaking the backlog that this and previous administration and Congress has helped create by underfunding the critical areas of automation and staffing. When I hear about accountability, every one of us who's here, whether we got here in this last election or before that, are part of this. So I'm at the point now, there aren't a lot of questions asked that haven't been asked. There's not a lot of things. It's going to become what that outcome looks like and how we get there. And so I trust these folks that are sitting there. I trust the VFW. I trust IAVA and the folks who are here. They're pressing us, and they're on your side to get this done. Now we've got to be on their side and break it and get this done, get the results. If this is a case of asking for this, there better be the courage here, whether it's taking it from somewhere else or doing it. If it's a funding issue, put the dang money in and get it done. If it's a personnel issue, put the personnel in there and get it done. But sometime within the coming months, this thing's got to be broken. We have got to be. And I am optimistic. I say that not in jest now. I am optimistic we can get there. I am willing to put myself on the line and tell them, because these folks are saying, I've been here a lot of times. I've sat in this room for 10 years. You're putting yourself and saying that we've got to, if you want accountability, and people who said, we need accountability, it's going to start with this side of the table, too, of holding to that. So I have a couple questions, though, trying to bring some of the things that I know on this. We keep talking about you're going to train these folks up. I'm an educator. Who writes the curriculum for training?
So thank you, Congressman Walz, for your question. I will tell you the curriculum developed now in the new challenge training is written by experts who know how to do this. It's written and informed by a compensation service who watch and tracks the errors that are committed by our employees. It's written and informed by our STAR accuracy team who evaluate our claims in a statistically valid way and are the ones that give us that overall claim quality, but now also are measuring our individual medical issue quality, which, by the way, as of right now, is at 95% across the nation.
Who teaches the class?
They are taught by our subject matter experts from across the nation in previous days. I will tell you, I've just hired 40 new dedicated people who will be trainers for this project.
As an educator, subject matter is critically important, but I would argue the art of pedagogy is there. Are they trained in differentiated delivery of education? Because are you going to give the same class to the 4-year processor, the 7-year processor, the 9-year processor, the high achieving, the low achieving? How are you differentiating how you're delivering this training?
So great question, Congressman, and probably we have some room to grow in that area. We are doing it by an adult learning methodology. We are doing it with a lives claim building while you're doing it, which, by the way, the live claim is actually helping production while you're in training. We probably need to look at, and I will take that as an idea, and I appreciate your idea on that. We probably need to look at better differentiation training. We do that between positions. We probably need to look at how do we target individual ones. I'll tell you, I'll be better positioned now in VBMS, better positioned now as a result of now measuring our medical issue level quality to, with precision, down to that individual employee, not even how many years they've had in, to be able to say, this error is the one you always keep doing. Let us help you fix that.
What if they don't, going back to Chairman Miller's question?
If they don't, we do what we do with every employee, what industry does with every employee, which is we have a performance improvement plan process.
Well, the big question here is, you sat in front of us, you will sit here again, General Hickey. if we come back in 6 months, or let's give it a year, if we come back in a year, is there significant change to the positive?
There's significant change already, Congressman. I have 25 stations on VBMS today. That means the minute you went live on that system, every single claim coming in the door, and we take in 100,000 a month nationally. So that means half of those, 50,000 claims coming in right now, are not turning into paper, making us inefficient and ineffective, adding to 5,000 tons of paper our employees touch every single year.
Do you blame those folks behind you for being a little skeptical?
I don't blame anybody, but I'll tell you why I'm convinced today we can do it. I'm convinced because I've just seen us do it in the long-term solution for our education claims, where we are now doing 95% of our work in less than 6 days. That tells me if you can take, with some automation in the system, you can take and break that work down better. If you can change the processes to do that better, then you can achieve a fundamental growth. February last year, I had 200,000 education claims in inventory, and y'all were talking to me about that, and you needed to be. Today, I have 43,000 claims in the inventory for education claims for the spring semester. 25% of what we had last year. That's the same thing we're trying to portend, not trying, we are committed to portend to get the rules-based automation into VBMS. It doesn't take an employee out of the process, it simplifies that work for that employee.
I yield back. Let's do it.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you very much. I was handed a note just a second ago. You may actually have a claim out there, and I don't know if this is real or not, but a claim that may be 11 years old in the Jackson office on a remand.
Congressman Miller, I'll have to go take a look at it. I'm happy to do that if you give me the name and the contact.
It came into us on our website. Let me ask real quick, kind of following up on Mr. Waltz's question. Have you been told by employees that any management is taking actions like ordering the processing of certain claims first in order to make the numbers look better than they really are, or accidentally clearing old claims for station credit before they are completed, and then reestablishing the claims under a 930 end product, which is not tracked by the central office?
I'm going to have to ask my colleague, who probably knows far more about those level of details than I do at this point in time, Ms. Rubens.
Thank you, ma'am. Chairman, I think I heard the first part of that was being directed by supervisors or managers to take action like that. And I would tell you that I believe the answer to that is no. We don't have any...
I didn't say that management is taking actions like that. Not management is telling them to do that, but is management doing that?
I don't believe that we have any managers that would do that. General Hickey had a bit of a conversation about integrity. It's critically important to us. I would tell you that the 930 end product that you refer to is an end product that if there's a mistake that's been made in processing a claim and the end product or the decision is made, and yet there's something else that we need to do to take care of that veteran, they will utilize that as a means of doing that without, if you will, inflating the credit that we've taken, and yet allow us to continue to track and ensure that veterans are being fully answered on any number of medical issues they provide us.
I will do a follow-up to you for the record on that, because I'd like to know a little bit more, and I'm sure it's just an area for focus. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Undersecretary Hickey, first of all, thank you for your service in the United States Army, your career. I'm as a first call for veteran, as an Iraq War veteran, I can't express my concern enough for this extraordinary backlog in VA claims, and it's simply not fair to those who have served this country and made tremendous sacrifices in defense of our freedom. At one location, the O&I oversight investigations substantiated through the Veterans Administration's own documentation that for many days in a row, over a period of weeks, dozens of claim raters had no claims to rate. How is it that with the backlog, such as it is, raters have no claims to rate?
So thank you, Congressman Kaufman, for both your service as well as your question. You know, when you go do some good things, you learn some lessons. And one of the things we learned is we started moving claims in that express lane a whole lot faster than we thought we could. So we have taken some action to, and frankly, cleared it out too fast. That's a positive from a transformation perspective because that's 30% of our claims right there. But what we have learned is we need to do something to adjust the number of people who are making those claims ready to rate in that lane so that there's a constant feed. And we have done that. In fact, we have directed out in the regional office while we look at better ways to even do this, that we get some assistance in people helping to build cases ready to rate. Frankly, fully developed claims will help that. Our partners in the VSOs, who I'm just so very pleased, are taking a very strong leadership in this realm. The more they bring in fully developed claims, the less of a burden it is on that VSR to move it forward, and then I can move more forward in that regard. And I have promised the VSOs, if they bring me a fully developed claim, we will put it down that express lane. That will solve for some of those problems as well. The other things, so as we're learning, we learn that we're rating claims faster. There's some tools now in VBMS that used to be in an initiative called Simplified Notification Letter that help our raters rate many more claims than they ever did before. So as we gain advantages in a part of the process, we're looking at what the second and third order effects are through our governance structure, through our subject matter experts, and we are making adjustments as we speak, because no plan on its face ever goes in a way in which you don't learn something as you go along.
According to the Veterans Administration, in fiscal year 2012, 185,169 rating-related claims were returned to open status for various reasons. In a particular regional office, the Oversight Investigations Subcommittee investigated, and on a given day, there were more than 150 claims labeled as ready for decision, but they weren't ready to be rated because they hadn't been properly developed. The claims were then denied or sent back to open status. Is this a training problem, deficiency?
So I will say one brief thing, then I will ask Secretary Rubens to address the details of your question. And the one brief thing that I will say is veterans like me, I did it to us in 2007, send in a claim, and they worked my claim for many, many months, and they got ready to be done with my claim. And I suddenly realized I could have filed for that, and I sent something new in. That will take it back out of that ready for decision process, back into the awaiting development effort and back into gathering evidence, because they now have to get the evidence on that specific medical condition I just claimed. So sometimes it's that issue, but I will defer to Secretary Rubens for her comment.
Thank you, ma'am. I would say you've got it just about exactly right. What we will endeavor to do if we have to return something to an open status is if there are issues that we can make payment on, we'll work to do that. On occasion, it will also happen if there's a question about a piece of evidence that a rating specialist who's got much more technical knowledge is looking for additional information or clarification on. And so that exchange, if you will, is what allows us to understand what's going on, and we continue to work to ensure that if there are training issues, we identify those and address those.
Okay. Undersecretary, what would be, in terms of, give me a specific number as to what you would expect the backlog to be a year from now in terms of what you see as the success of your leadership.
Congressman, I can tell you that in 2015, I will have no claim in our hands in 125 days, and we will do them at a 98% accuracy level.
1 year from now.
I don't have that number with me, but I'm happy to provide that to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General, for being here. I wanted to sort of follow up on understanding that we're sort of in the middle of this transformation process, and it's clearly a challenge, I think, to determine staffing levels that are currently adequate and certainly staffing levels that will be sufficient in the future. The chair talked about planning ahead and surge capacity, etc. In our health committee last week, we examined the issues around physician staffing and staff planning and trying to come up with a data driven method of determining what those staffing levels need to be. Is there something similar going on the benefits side?
Thank you, Congressman Brownlee, for your question. I'll tell you, we have been looking at the staffing issue. I think I described earlier in the hearing here, but we had a resource allocation model that, frankly, from my perspective, doesn't make any sense. I think that our resource allocation model ought to be built on the demand of veterans. It ought to be veteran-centric from that perspective. This resource allocation model years ago was established, so we're in the process of redoing that now. We're looking at what's the right mix of VSRs to raters in this new environment. That's important to note too, because the nature of the work will change in a new transformed VBA. What's the right mix of VSRs to raters? Is there a new structure? Is there a new career ladder that needs to be built into there to allow us to move forward? And I still do believe, so we do have your answer to your question is yes, we're looking at that right now. I don't have a clear defined answer for you right now because we're thrashing through it as we speak.
Thank you. And I wanted to follow up on another issue. We have talked a lot about the productivity metric, and certainly that is a quantitative measurement that can be easily measured and can be interpreted differently. But you've mentioned several times in response to some questions about quality metrics. And I'm not sure what those quality metrics are. I'm interested to know what they are and how you're measuring them and how they also fit into your goals.
So I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about that because we've made some changes in the last year, though I will not change the numbers out there. I'll keep it all exposed, all the existing numbers, but I want to further inform the dialogue. Yesterday, an employee in VBA was rated, no matter how many medical issues were inside that claim, they were rated on a up or down, complete 0 or 100%. Did I get everything right in the claim? And with an increasing number of claims that are in that 16 range, 16 distinct, unique medical issues inside that claim, if they did 15 right, they didn't get credit for the 15 in their quality. They got no credit for that, which was a disincentive, frankly, to picking up a claim that had a lot of medical issues in it. So what I have done is I agree with our folks in the field, and I heard a lot from our bargaining unit employees on this issue. I heard a lot from our staff on this issue. It's not a really good reflection. Frankly, from a veteran's perspective, it's not a really good reflection of our quality. They want to know, how do I do on knees? How do I do on backs? How do I do on PTSD and TBI and eyes and ears and all the 800 diagnostic codes we do? So now I have instructed the staff, and they have done it. We have rebuilt the systems to allow us to measure medical issue level quality all the way down to the employee. I could do it at the regional office level since October of last year. I will tell you, looking at medical issues that way from a quality perspective, I have 11 regional offices today that are already at 98% quality. I have half the regional offices at 95% quality. I have all but 2 regional offices above 90% quality. I have 2 below that. We're working hard on them. There are some of our opportunities for our set training to improve that capability. But that's a fundamentally, I think, more accurate way of looking at how we're doing it, and frankly informs our training better. Instead of training to all, as we do today, I can train now, moving forward, to that individual employee or that regional office's area of challenge under a medical issue. So that is where we are focused and where we're driving. But I will always leave the claim level quality up there so that everybody knows, that is where, how we define it from a claim perspective. I just want to inform the medical issue discussion.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bilirakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for your service, General, and your continued service. In my district office, I have several caseworkers that work specifically on benefits. I hear often from veterans who are frustrated by the generated letters they receive from the VA on their claims listing out-of-date time frames. they receive letters stating that a claim should be complete in 180 days, when oftentimes it's taking a year and a half. They want to be able to plan accordingly while they are waiting for their claims to be processed. In other words, they'd like to have some certainty, particularly during these troubled economic times, particularly since the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War and a new generation of veterans are entering the system. What is being done to ensure that the time frames are accurate? And if the time frame is not accurate, are veterans being contacted with an updated estimation as to when the claim will be processed? I know it's very, very important, we have to give them hope, but I don't want to give them false hope either.
So thank you, Congressman Billy Rackus, for your question. And we are doing some things. So and I do know we could do better. We could do better. So we're trying in a couple of areas. First of which, if you have an e-benefits account, you are actually getting the regional office number updated on a regular basis. It feeds right from the data system that tells you how many days you can expect your claim to take in that regional office. It will be inflated right now as I'm having, folks doing the old claims right now. Those are hitting the average, but it will at least give them some level of that. Second, I know the letters. We create a lot of letters. And frankly, there's a whole group of people who have asked us to quit sending letters and start sending something to their email box or put it on their e-benefits account. So they will know, what they'll have a letter, they'll have it electronically, they won't have it in paper. VBMS is doing something to help us on the letters because we create so many of them. We are doing things to try to improve those letters, to improve the readability of those letters, to simplify our language in those letters, to quit talking lawyerese and talk instead human beingese, and getting a clear, concise language in those letters moving forward.
Thank you. Second question, Mr. Chairman. In the St. Petersburg Regional Office, claims development is the largest delay, with 67% of all claims awaiting evidence. What is VA's strategy to address such a deficiency in evidence? If you can answer that first, please.
Absolutely can, and thanks for asking the question, Congressman. Largely, the evidence that VA needs in order to decide a claim is not owned or generated or held by VBA, over its lifetime. And it's largely, we need a couple of things. We need medical records. That includes the ones while you were in your service to this country and this nation. And we need the character and nature of your service or your personnel records. Those are the two big chunks we need. We also need, and we'll go get it, in private medical records. We actually like to ask our veterans, and have provided a means for them to do that with something called a disability benefit questionnaire, where they can literally hand it to their private doc and ask them to fill it out and get it back, which gives us exactly the medical evidence we need. We are seeing an increase in DBQ utilization. Thank you, I'm sorry. But we need to do more, especially with private docs using those DBQs. That will help us with the evidence gathering. But the most important game changer on this was 3 actions that I've had as of January this year. Social Security and IRS are now giving us not access to their data once a year, access to their data on a weekly basis. That will help us immensely. DOD has now a new process they've agreed to with me. We have a signed memorandum of understanding where they are now stood up cells in the Air Force and the Army. Navy's doing it slightly different, but same concept. They are gathering all of the DOD medical records, now to include TRICARE records and contract medical records, things we have a hard time getting a hold of. They are gathering all that up before a service member departs service, either separating or retiring. They are certifying it's 100% complete as of date, and they're handing it to me. That has a major game-changing effort on that awaiting development, awaiting evidence bucket. We then will be able to, in a much faster way, rate that case, get that decision done, and move forward. And by the way, rate that case and do all those other actions electronically coming in the door to VBMS, because that'll be a new claim. We'll scan it, we'll ingest it, it'll go directly into VBMS and move along and be done without paper.
I have one last question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Thank you. By itself, the St. Petersburg Regional Office has stated that it would need almost $2.5 million in overtime funds in order to meet the fiscal year 2013 production goal. How will the VA address this need?
I will let my colleague, Secretary Rubin, answer the question relative to overtime management.
Thank you, ma'am. Congressman Bilirakis, we every year have a set amount of money that we will look at to distribute as overtime dollars. The Undersecretary mentioned earlier the opportunity to utilize mandatory overtime to ensure that we are getting the best output from across the entire workforce. It is a difficult decision to make. And as we do that, it is about the volume of people that we have and the amount of work. Looking to maximize the output, we will continue to work with the St. Petersburg Regional Office, obviously, to ensure that they are getting the best outcome for the resources we have to make available to them.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with you on that, specifically the St. Pete Regional. Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Hickey, I'd also like to thank you for your service, and wanted to bring to your attention a case that we handled in my office recently. We had a phone call from the wife of a terminally ill veteran who had a service-related disability, and she wanted our help in expediting the claim that goes through the Waco office. And we were able to help expedite it, but by the time that they got the information back on the claim, unfortunately, her husband had passed away. And at that point, the claim had been outstanding for 450 days. When we dove in a little bit deeper, we found that the average out of Waco is 439 days, and 80% of all outstanding claims are over 125 days. And so it's important for me to hear, and more importantly, the veterans in El Paso and the region around El Paso to hear how you plan to address this. And I appreciate the ambition of getting to all claims under 125 days by 2015, but it really seems that there's a crisis in that Waco regional office. And talking to the other members of Congress whose communities are served out of that office, I sense that urgency from them as well. So would love to have your comments on that and how we plan to address that.
Thank you, Congressman O'Rourke, and I will tell you just straight up front, we actually are activating some plans in Waco, and I will let Secretary Rubin address that. But I want to talk to you first about, and I think this is an important venue to do this, because I could use your help in this regard. We do prioritize terminally ill, Medal of Honor, former prisoner of war, and homeless cases. So please, if you ever have anyone that falls into any of those categories that's having a difficult time, we do prioritize them. Sometimes people don't tell us the word terminally ill, and so we don't know that, but as soon as we do, I have literally moved cases in a day. We've stopped all kinds of work and gathered a whole team around to move that claim in a day to try to beat that terminally ill veteran's passing. But we do have ways to help that widow with a claim that's open afterwards. I'll defer that and the status of the Waco office to Secretary Rubin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Waco was one of our last NEMR regional offices to come off the readjudication effort. What we did when we completed those readjudication claims is that brokering center, that surge capacity, turned them first to their local regional offices, and so the Waco regional office has benefited from that. The other thing that I think has made a tremendous difference for the Waco regional office is the arrival of a new director there. And in fact, since last year, the inventory is down to almost 10%. The rating accuracy has begun to climb, and as we see in the 3-month rolling average, that they are now just about at 95%. And so while we're focusing on our oldest claims, causing that average days to complete number to rise, we're seeing an increase in the an increase in the quality and a decrease in the inventory. We'll continue to work with Waco to ensure that the Texas veterans' needs are met.
I appreciate that, and I've spoken to, as I mentioned earlier, some of the other members of Congress whose districts are served out of that office, Congressman Flores and others, and talked about periodic visits to the Waco office to meet with the regional director and find out what we can do out of our district offices. And General Hickey, you mentioned that it's helpful to you and we can notify you of those cases that need to be expedited, for example, with terminally ill veterans. I heard you in answer to a previous question talk about the need for VSOs to prepare claims that are ready to go. What else can I do out of our office in El Paso to help these veterans who are waiting obviously far too long to get a response back?
So Congressman O'Rourke, the Texas Commission is doing a lot to help us, the Texas Commission for Veterans. They have come together to help us create those fully developed claims, to pull those in, to give us some assistance in getting all the evidence gathered from a veteran who is filing. And I appreciate that as much as I appreciate all our VSOs really leaning inside the wire of the fence and really doing yeoman's work to help us significantly. So the things that are critical to our doing a claim, bottom line, are the evidence that we need to make the decision. Private physicians in the state of Texas and their increasing willingness to complete a disability benefit questionnaire, which has been created to capture explicitly the medical evidence we need in order to make a decision. Private physician rolling in and helping their patients who are veterans would be a major lift in the state of Texas, and something I'm asking for across the nation is a private physician engagement in this area.
Great. Thank you. We look forward to working with you on that. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much,
answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Undersecretary, in your written testimony, you included information on individual employee incentives. While you said that at the heart of the performance award program is a foundation focused on quality, you went on to say that the criteria for performance are determined locally and vary by office. Now, AFGE wrote in its statement that in practice, management incentives are almost always based upon production alone, and production is always highlighted since there are several different production categories for a station to qualify for an award. So my question is this: how is high-level quality mandated for incentive rewards if there are no national criteria?
Thank you, Chairman Miller. I will tell you that I highly value my relationship with my labor partners. They help inform us of good ideas. In fact, many of our labor and our employees, bargaining unit employees, have created some of these really good ideas that are already showing merit for us. I will say, to answer your question specifically.
My question, very simple. How is high-level quality mandated for incentive rewards if there is no national criteria?
There is, Congressman, national criteria. There's a national quality standard every single year. There are also, at the regional office level, while there might be variance, it's not below a basic standard. They may have increased in that particular locality and may have locally negotiated an ability to hold people to a higher standard. But there is no negotiation of a standard lower than the basic national standard.
So I'm to believe that AFGE would negotiate a higher standard for their employees than what VA would request?
There are local level negotiations that do exactly that, Congressman. And I will defer to Secretary Rubens, who has more experience.
No, that's enough on that question. I appreciate it. In December of 2012, which was just a few months ago, claims processors and raters' performance standards were changed. Is that true?
That is correct, Chairman.
Were the employees notified of that change?
I'll ask Secretary Rubens to talk about the strategy for that.
Just yes or no. Were they notified?
Chairman Miller, yes, they were notified.
Okay. I've been told they were not. And so my question is, if they were not, how can unannounced productivity changes impact productivity? I mean, I would hope that you would, but I've been told that they weren't. So, yeah.
So I would tell you that the AFGE were integral partners in the teams that developed the new performance standards that were released in December. As we released those, stations were asked to inform all employees. We are, as we continue down the path of implementation.
Can you tell me how do you inform all employees? How does that work?
I provide the notification to the regional offices and require and ask that they have group meetings with their entire service center, that the teams have meetings, and that as individual employees get the new standards, they are effectively provided with a form on the top that they will sign along with their supervisor to ensure that they've been discussed. recognizing that there was a change, we want to make sure that everybody's aware.
Good. So it is documented that those changes were noticed to each employee.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Michaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And to follow up on actually what something Mr. Waltz mentioned, actually the chairman mentioned about looking further ahead, the surge, are you able to take care of it? And I remember Paul Sullivan telling us that when he was over at VA, tried to get Secretary Nicholson to put more emphasis on VBA because of the surge they're seeing from Iraq and Afghanistan. That wasn't done. And I know, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Waltz and I have been talking about some long-term planning within the VA. We'll talk to you afterwards about how we might be able to look out 5, 10, 20 years. My question, General Hickey, and I'll try to phrase it in a way so you can answer yes or no, and my last one to allow you to elaborate. And it actually, part of my opening statement, I talked about claims and as well as medical conditions, which are different in how you can quantify that. Is it my understanding that you're willing to look at medical conditions versus claims and move that through the system since it'll all be electronic?
Congressman, not only willing to look at, I think it's a great idea, and it's part of our 2015 focus, is what we call centers of excellence.
Okay. My second question, we saw a chart earlier when you look at the productivity of an employee, and actually it gets to my opening statement again. When you look at claims, you can have one claim, it counts as one, but within a claim you can have 13, 14, 10, 11 different medical conditions, so it's more complex. Can you provide the committee, if you have the information available, as far as the productivity of an employee as a relates to the medical conditions versus the claims?
Congressman, I'm not sure if I can do that yet, but I will try. I will see if we can do that level of productivity look. I know I will be better able to do it when we're in VBMS than I can do today, but I will look and see if I can. If I can, I will certainly provide it to the committee.
Yeah, because I think that's very important, because sometimes the numbers might not bode out as how productive you are or not being. And also, getting back to my original comment, when you look at some of the worst sites that we have in the system, whether it's Los Angeles or Nevada, compared to some of the better sites, Togus and St. Paul, since it's all going to be electronic, are you going to be looking at maybe medical conditions and some of the more excellent sites such as Togus, St. Paul, have them deal with the more complex medical conditions, and some of the ones that are not complex to give it to the poor performing sites?
So, Congressman, that's a great question, and this is exactly part of the look that we're taking from a strategy perspective. And I say it this way. By 2015, when we're completely paperless, and we'll be completely paperless earlier than that, by 2015, we will have the availability to know at the medical issue level who are the best people across the country that do TBI, that do PTSD, that do knees, that do diabetes, that do Parkinson's. And we will be able to, not by what we do today, pack up a whole bunch of big, thick claims, put them in a box, put a whole bunch of effort into the things that have to go in there to make sure we're tracking it right, mail it, check it in, put it in another place in the regional office. We won't. Today, 25 stations can move work around between themselves by pushing a button, and it's brokered.
Okay. So what are you saying? We can adjudicate numerous medical conditions simultaneously in VBMS?
It's part of the strategy for going into a paperless environment, is to see that if we have the art of that possible and we're capable of doing that and going faster as a result of doing it and higher quality as a result of doing it. It's an and equation for me.
Yep. Talking to some of the VSOs, particularly the ones that have service officers, looking at testimony over on the Senate side from the DAV last week, Joe Violante had a lot of praises, even though they're frustrated with a backlog, praises for what VBA has been doing. He also had mentioned some recommendations as well. as far as VBA bringing in an independent panel of IT experts to review the plan and progress of VBMS, such as, Google, Apple, Amazon. Is that something that the department's willing to do?
So thanks, Congressman. I don't have an OIT person or an IT person here representing us on the panel, but I will tell you there's lots of independent verification that we're doing inside of VBA for a lot of our different programs. In fact, our claims ingest, our veterans claim ingest program, which is our way now that we're getting into a paperless environment, our scanning and the like, has now an independent verification contract on it to help us make sure we know that we're doing it right and well. I will take that one for the question and respond to you to that one for the question. I just don't have all the clean insights into everything that happens on the IT side relative to that.
Thank you. In my last question, and we've heard it from the Big Six as far as your willingness, and you sat down with them continuously as they raise concerns about VBMS. Because of their work with the National Service Officers. Have you reached out to the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans or other groups as well, even though they don't have service officers?
I have two meetings that I do on a monthly basis. One meeting is with our Big Six VSOs with the National Service Officers. Another meeting is with our great organizations like MOA and others like Navy League, all those kinds of organizations. I have invited on that second panel to meet with IAVA in that group, and I'm more than willing to do so.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michaud. Real quickly, you have talked about being completely paperless by 2015. I know that's the goal. That's a great, laudable goal, as are most of the goals that VA sets up. But given some testimony that we received here in the committee a couple of weeks ago regarding the individual electronic health record, and now it appears that VA and DOD are going on divergent paths again, and DOD is fighting the change that's coming. How is that going to impact your ability to adjudicate the claims with it appearing that there is no, they say they cooperate, but they don't cooperate?
Chairman Miller, thanks for the question. I'll tell you that I'm not IEHR. That is more on the health administration side, though when it is here, it will obviously benefit us. So I would prefer to take that piece for the record, but I will tell you I'm not waiting for anything like that. Because I'm doing right now under a different agreement with DOD, getting our hands on the complete medical record, the contract medical records, the TRICARE medical records, all brought together with a letter on top from DOD certifying they've gone through the complete thing and everything's there, and they're presenting that to me now for point forward. All of our veterans are coming out now.
Okay, and also you highlighted e-benefits. You have a great faith in that, and here's a question that was brought to me, and you can take this for the record too, but apparently you can only download one page of documents to your e-benefits file, and then once you do, it can take upwards to 75 days before it's reflected as received in the system.
Chairman, I have to say that I don't believe that's accurate. I can tell you I can download, and I have downloaded my complete personnel records, and it didn't take one page times all the rest of them. I got them in a PDF version. I downloaded them. I have them in my little I Love Me file at home. And no, it doesn't take all that time to upload and upgrade that.
Well, it wasn't the time to upload. It's how soon after you downloaded or uploaded all of that information did it show up as received into the system?
I'll go back and find out. I'd love to have the information that you have and go back and check on it, and I'd be happy to provide you an answer to that.
There it is, handwritten.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. I'm gonna go have lunch with Sergeant Shaft.
Oh, I talked to him before.
I need some more nail files.
Yeah, no.